Hey everyone, and welcome to the People's Health Alliance, for the people, by the people, empowering people over their own health and well-being. My name's Shirley Blanch and I am Community Ambassador for the People's Health Alliance. And today I am joined by the lovely Charlotte Henderson, who is a Perinatal Safeguarding Advocate and birth doula. Welcome to the People's Health Alliance, Charlotte.
Thank you, Shirley.
So it's really lovely to have you here. I know that you've got an amazing story that you're going to share with us today. But before we do any of that, I'm sure that there'll be people listening who probably have never heard of a birth doula or a perinatal safeguarding advocate. So could you just share with us what you actually do for a living?
Right, okay. Well, yeah, so before I became a doula, I never heard of a doula either. So a doula is a non-medical professional, and we support women through pregnancy, birth, and the postnatal period by providing them with evidence-based information, helping to support them during birth with practical things such as, birthing positions, massage. Some doulas offer, hypnobirthing, aromatherapy, all sorts of different things. But the practical things, such as breastfeeding, and, you still have clients getting back to you a year later with things about weaning and potty
Yeah.
training. And it's basically like having a really good friend all through your pregnancy who knows a lot about birth. And a massive part of that, a massive part of birth is advocacy. Often, especially in the hospital environments, there's a lot of coercion, there's a lot of non-evidence-based recommendations. And really, when you're giving birth, you're not fit to be advocating for yourself. You need somebody there to hold the line for you and help you stand your ground and help you to be heard. Um, as for being a perinatal safeguarding advocate, after I trained as a doula, I then trained as an advocate. And as a family advocate, various different areas, but my specialism is addiction, maternity and safeguarding. And I call myself a dependency doula because you probably know you wouldn't have heard of my role because nobody does quite what I do, both from lived and professional experience. Because being a doula requires a certain degree of advocacy, and being a family advocate requires a certain degree of knowledge in young families. But to merge both professions in equal measure is what I do, and I deal with all the multiple agencies. I deal with recovery services, I deal with maternity services, social workers, family court, and tie all of that together and signpost. And yeah,
Wow, it's a lot. That's a lot, and I think it's really amazing. I love the whole advocacy thing because as somebody that's had two children myself, gone through the whole sort of mainstream medical model for it, I had a couple of quite tricky births myself. I do get what you mean. You do feel completely powerless in those situations. So I can really understand the benefit of having somebody there advocating on your behalf. And also the birth doula, I think, we are so vulnerable as women when we're pregnant and when we're giving birth. It's still like probably the most vulnerable position that you can be in, and also emotionally vulnerable as well as physically vulnerable, and trying to make decisions. You're right, it's very, very difficult in those situations. So I love the sound of everything that you do, and I also love it when I speak to people that come from lived experience, because I think you bring a level of passion and understanding from lived experience that you maybe don't get from other people. So you've got an amazing story, and I know that you've sort of shared it in more depth. But you're going to give us an overview today of how you came to be in this position. So yeah, if you could share with us how you got to take on this role, that would be amazing.
yeah. So when I fell pregnant with my first child, I was addicted to heroin and crack cocaine. So I had a very serious intravenous drug addiction. And I've been trying to get clean. The services weren't as helpful as they could be. I obviously wasn't helping myself as much as I could have been. But I thought this is when the help's going to come. There are two lives involved now. This is it, everything I've been asking for. But what I experienced was quite the opposite,
Mm.
actually. I experienced safeguarding referrals. Any challenge was just met with escalation. And to compound things, I was assigned a social worker who was while they're in the minority, this one genuinely was a malevolent renegade social worker, and her only objective was to take my child no matter what I did.
Wow.
So I found myself in a situation where during the pregnancy, nobody ever asked me about a birth plan. All they wanted was urine samples, blood samples, just to pass on to other agencies. As far as they were concerned, the priority was to get the baby out of me alive and away from me. And so I went into labour. I had a very uncomplicated birth, although there was a lot of medical coercion in that setting. But I did manage to do it drug-free. And then things just got really weird. Both me and my daughter were fit to leave the hospital. We were medically fit. But the social worker called them saying, don't let her leave until I call you. And I was basically falsely in prison for 2.5 weeks while we were both fit to leave. And in this period, the social worker stopped answering calls from the hospital. And because I just moved out of area, I just got drug-free. I wasn't on drugs anymore. I'd done everything they wanted. And so I had a new drug worker. I had a new midwife. I had a new health visitor. None of these people had met me. They'd only seen my paperwork. And she stood outside the town hall for 40 minutes in the rain, pretending I hadn't turned up, so that she could apply for an interim order to put my child into temporary foster care.
Oh my God.
So I had to fight that from hospital. I wasn't even allowed to, I had to be represented in my absence by my solicitor. I wasn't even allowed to leave the hospital. And thankfully I managed to fight that. But what I took away from that birth was, firstly, there should be somebody that could support that situation, because I was lucky enough that I'm articulate enough that I can advocate for myself, that my partner wasn't a drug user. But if that was just a single drug addict, you know, when you say that they're lying, your word carries very little weight against all that big stack of paperwork and all those professionals that collude together. The only other thing I took away from it was the only thing that could have made my birth better was being far away from the hospital. So when I fell pregnant again 3 years later, I decided to inform myself and educate myself about birth. I started to train as a doula, and I was due to start one of the first courses actually that Nikita started with When Push Comes to Shove. But the day before, I suffered a placental abruption, which is a very, very serious birth complication, and one of the only ones that is actually life-threatening to mothers. And well, with the combination of some errors and with the restrictions and policies that were put in place in 2021, it took 1.5 hours before an ambulance got to me after making a call. And then by the time we got to the hospital, there were another 1.5 hours of delay. So it was 3 hours I was left hemorrhaging. And this hemorrhage was very serious. The hospital was 10 minutes away, and I lost 2.5 litres of blood between my house and the labour suite. And the only thing that I was afraid of was unnecessary intervention. But actually what I experienced was the opposite. I got there. They would not find out if my baby was alive until I agreed to have a COVID test. The nurse was physically putting a hand up in front of the obstetrician and saying, no, wait. And they would not run an ultrasound until I'd had it done, which they then used to separate me from my daughter after she was born. And then there was no continuous monitoring. There was nothing. They just watched me bleed out in the labour suite while the midwife was begging the doctor to intervene. Eventually, they did take action when I started to bleed so badly that, I really would have had minutes left. But by the time my daughter was born, she was already gone. And it took them 20 minutes to revive her. And she's permanently disabled as a result of this. She has cerebral palsy. She has epilepsy. Although she hasn't had a seizure for a long time, she has a permanent brain injury. And it gave me a fresh perspective, at least, on why we still have the allopathic medical system, on why we have obstetric science, and when it's appropriately applied, it really is life-saving, although it should be reserved for pathology, such as mine. But again, it was just, everything was just applied in completely the wrong way. So I trained as an advocate after training as a doula. And I decided that, all of these lovely redemptive free births and, very well-paying clients, it's all nice, but this wasn't my calling. There are women out there that really, really, really do need the best of the best because they've been through the worst of the worst. And there are women that do not have the choice to stay outside of the system. You can't have a home birth if you don't have a home. You can't,
Absolutely.
what are you going to do with a support network when you don't even know who the father is?
Absolutely.
And a lot of them are just, the result of the work that they've had to do to support their addictions. So I partnered with Sarah Holdway. She was one of the founding directors of the Autonomy Hotline, who trained me as an advocate. And we have now set up a CIC ourselves.
Wow.
It's called the Conduit Collective. And the point of it is an access fund and to connect women with the real therapists. So we already have on board somatic practitioners. We have a poetry therapist. We have, dietary. A lot of these women, they have autoimmune problems. They have endocrine problems, and they're just being pathologized. It's, you've got BPD, and let's just give you thyroxine, and that's going to help. And so that's what that's there for. But mostly the work that I do now, I've not attended a birth for a while. I do staff training, and I deliver talks and workshops. So I'm starting my first full-length course in September. That's a 12-week advanced perinatal safeguarding support course. So yeah, that's what I do and how I got there.
That's amazing. I mean, it sounds absolutely horrific what you've been through from the very beginning, and the judgment that was put on you and the conditions that were put on you. You obviously had a terrible experience with social services. You managed to get past that, and I'm just wondering, did you ever get any kind of apology from the way that you were treated? Did you feel sort of in the end that you were vindicated? Because obviously you managed to overcome that prejudice, but did you get any? Was there ever any action taken against that social worker?
So as far as my records show, there was no vindication. Everything stands, which, if anything were to happen in future, would go against me.
Right.
I might have my second birth, by the way, I was reported to social services again. While my daughter was fighting for her life in an induced coma due to the care she received from them, because they reported me for a concealed pregnancy. And I did nothing to conceal I even called the hospital a few weeks before. I said, I'm pregnant. I'm planning on an unassisted birth. I'm not going to tell you my name because I know that you will harass me. But this is when I'm due. I just want you to be aware of me if I might need to transfer. I recalled the entire phone conversation. I knew the woman's name who I spoke to. She was saved in my phone. They said, we can't verify that because you didn't give us your name. And then reported me to social services after I'd just been through this horrific birth and for a baby that might not even live. So yeah, that's what my records will tell you. But anybody who knows how to read between the lines, any social worker who sees my paperwork will know what happened. Because I was at the very base level. They already had permission to put her in temporary foster care for 3 months before having another review. Had that been successful, that's what would have happened. They already had permission from the courts. Within 3 months, they walked out my life and I never heard from them again. They knew what had happened. I got given another social worker straight away, followed by another social worker straight away. After the last core group meeting, I asked for the minutes from my PLO, my interim meeting, after it had been shut down, and the impartial mediator that they employ, she said, sorry, this has been to a PLO. They'd hidden it from her because they wanted to withdraw that sneakily because they knew that she put some resistance up, or she'd want to know why. How on earth they could pull it after saying I was so dangerous, because the entire report was completely full of lies. I did want to pursue it. I tried to get my paperwork. I never really got all of it at once. When I did, this is the problem for a lot of people. So I can do this for other people professionally, but doing it for myself, it's been 8 years. Now, I went to deliver a workshop at Sandy the Light Festival earlier on this year. And just as I arrived, I got the email back from the local authority giving me my files because I've just requested them again. It's been 8 years. I still haven't opened it. It's the trauma is because it's not just the things that are the lies that they told about you. Even the things that are true look so cold and harsh on paper. And for about 2.5 years, I would wake up and my daughter breastfed. We co-slept, so she was always with me. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, still half asleep, frantically pulling back the bed sheets, throwing everything up because I thought somebody had taken my baby.
Yeah.
I'd just freeze if somebody knocked on the door. I'd freeze if a number called and I didn't know who it was.
And it's
So
awful to be in that level of fear when
Yeah.
you're sort of breastfeeding, when you're a new mother anyway, when it's an extremely stressful time anyway, and giving birth at the best of times, it can be really stressful. But having to deal with all of that is unimaginable in terms of and I'm not surprised you've got trauma from that. But then to have the second experience that you had in the COVID madness, I mean, do you think it was because of the situation being in COVID at the time that you ended up in that situation? Had it been a normal time, that it might not have been like that? Or do you think that there would have still been this prejudice against you?
I think because of my choices, there would have been still some sort of prejudice, but because there were so many of those choices that they didn't like, the fact that I mean, they were more bothered about asking me, why don't you have a midwife? Why don't you have a midwife? How is that relevant? Because I responded appropriately. I started to bleed. I called an ambulance. It would have been the same if I had a midwife. There definitely was the damage to the system that had been done by these policies as well. Was a problem, particularly with the ambulance service. I mean, when I got to the hospital, this is the thing, they forced me to have a PCR test. It was 3 a.m. There was nobody there. They didn't need to do that. And then after I had my baby, it was 8.5 hours before I saw her, and they kept lying to us and saying that she wasn't stable. You don't want to see the things they're doing to her right now. They have to do this to save her life, but you don't want to see. None of that was true. She was stable. 8.5 hours before we saw her, because they were waiting for the results from the test. And after these 8.5 hours, I'd not slept all night. I'd lost a massive amount of blood. And I get wheeled in a wheelchair, and the first thing the doctor said to me was, "So, Charlotte, what's your problem with medicine then?"
Oh my
goodness. Did you not even tell me how my child is? And then he seemed to take joy in saying to me, because we're going to have to work this out, because we're going to be working together for a long time, because she has a significant brain injury. She's been having seizures, just like that. That's that animosity.
Yeah. So was there any did you have any calls for legal redress against the hospital for negligence or anything like that, because it does sound to me like you weren't treated properly? Were there grounds? Have you been able to pursue that at all?
It's still ongoing. It's a very long process. So if your child is damaged at birth, you have until they're 21 to claim.
Wow.
And I was thinking about doing it, but what really solidified it for me was I got a letter when she was 8 weeks old. I can't remember the title for this midwife, but it's a specific title for literally their cover-up midwife. So this woman trained as a midwife, and this is the work she does now. And it said, well, it started off with, firstly, congratulations on your daughter's full recovery. She's disabled for life. She's still in nappies. She's 5 years old. At one point, she was having 60 seizures a day, and they congratulated me on her full recovery. They went on to say that it's typical when a baby is born in poor condition like that they just take it upon themselves to do an investigation without anybody asking them, which I'm not so sure of, and neither was my solicitor. They found that there were only 7 minutes of delays in all, which is profoundly wrong, but it just so happens that it falls 1 minute below the one that is considered to be responsible for permanent brain damage. And they sent me this letter, and I was furious. I just thought, if she was dead, you'd have sent me that same letter, but minus the congratulations. I think a lot of what happened, I mean, the COVID stuff didn't help, but it's fear of litigation. I mean, I'm in my delirium and blood loss. I'm thinking, oh, they're respecting my birth decisions. They're not doing anything. While everybody else in the room is thinking, oh my God, this woman's going to die. And the doctor's just frozen. This is a trained, skilled professional who is trained to identify pathology. And he kept turning around to the midwife and saying, do you think this is liquor? Do you think there's liquor mixed in? She said, no, it's all blood. Please, I think she's having an abruption, please. And he just kept going, shh, and then telling me to tell my story all over again. And eventually I said, what is it that we're waiting for? And he said, well, we don't like to take babies out too soon. Well, if they hadn't taken her out, we'd both be dead. But she was only 1 day away from being considered term. So she was 36 plus 6. And either way, you know, around 50% of women who come to hospital presenting with symptoms of a placental abruption, those babies are already dead. The priority is to save the mother's life, and then maybe as a bonus, you'll save the child as well. It was obvious there was only one treatment, but they're so frozen because of they don't just have patients to protect. They have, their insurance premiums to protect. They have all the contracts to protect. They have it's an aggressive work environment, particularly nursing and midwifery, where there are females at the working level. And there's a lot of workplace bullying. This is why a lot of blind eyes because they can make your life hell, and it's all big family. They always talk like that, don't they? The NHS, we're all a big family. If you lose your job, you're not just losing money, you're losing your entire identity. And that's everything that you're dealing with before the welfare of the patients even come into question. It's, will we get sued?
So that's sort of an ongoing thing with you, but it has led you to this incredible work that you now do. And sometimes some of the worst things that happen to us in life lead us to evolve and find our path, perhaps. Is this what you feel now? Is this why you feel so passionate about what you do for other people? And what kind of work do you do for people now? You sort of mainly doing workshops and talks, but I'm guessing you've sort of helped people in the same situation as yourself as well.
Well, that's it. I still do the one-on-one advocacy. The whole point of creating the course that I've created and on future projects that I also have in mind is that my aim is, and it's ambitious, but I think it's entirely possible, is to have one of me, because I'm only one person, to have one of me in every single NHS trust, in every single local authority up and down the country. Because a lot of these women in addiction, they turn up completely unbooked. They're just giving birth. Nobody even knew they were pregnant. And then that's it. And I've always thought, I can't save everybody. I can't save all the children. What I can do is hold them with the compassion that they deserve, because that still doesn't mean that you don't get birth choices, even if your child is going to be taken at birth. If anything, you need more support, because that's the only experience you are ever going to get to share with your child. So at least have something good to take away from it. I have overseen removals, and it's horrible, but it was necessary when I've seen it. But the vast majority of the work that I do, and I think this is one thing that really worked against me, is that I didn't fit the conventional mold of an addict. So I was making these unconventional decisions. If I'd have thought that I'd be allowed a home birth, I'd have done it. I didn't know I was allowed. And if anything, how quickly I managed to recover was regarded not as something to congratulate, but actually as a source of suspicion. I was on methadone for about 7.5 years. My daughter was 4 years old. My first daughter was 4 years old when I came off of methadone. And it wasn't until I handed in that last urine sample that was free of everything that I thought I was believed, that I felt believed. I always felt like I was still proving I wasn't on drugs, even though I was living perfectly functional life. So I didn't fit that mold. Now, obviously, training with when push comes to shove, we support women who make very unconventional decisions. And this is the vast majority of my work. The reason that I made the CIC is so that the women who I specialise in can access me, because at this point they can. But most women that come to me, it is unconventional decisions that are being interpreted as unsafe parenting. And a lot of the cases that I get, it's just a pre-birth. It's just, they don't want to have a health visitor. And then they find out they're home educating as well, and then they don't want to vaccinate, and then it's bang, 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 bang. And then they build up this massive picture that you're this, insanely paranoid conspiracy theorist, and, you'd rather pull out your own child's appendix than go to a hospital, like there are, really many people in the world who just point blank don't believe in hospitals. I've yet to meet somebody like that. And that's where, most of my cases could have been shut down with just a phone call. And it was just a matter of communication. This is why I train the professionals, because I shouldn't be needed. And then you find it 6 months later, and we're talking about child protection plans. over, I mean, really a lost piece of paperwork. But because you made these other bits of, decisions that, there's been some massive, active attempt to conceal a child or something. Also, with the addiction front, people assume that it's just that expertise means I've just worked with addicts. No. One of my very first safeguarding cases was a young mother who she was given a drug test that she was not told about. She wasn't informed about it. She wasn't asked. She only found out when she got the results. It was faulty testing. And on the back of this faulty testing, she ended up spending the first 2.5 months of her child's life in a mother and baby unit. Those places, they're very hard to get into, and they're even harder to get out of. And eventually she got the test that she'd been asking for, which showed that she wasn't using drugs at all. But it had escalated to that point because they just, I don't know if maybe they thought it was a waste of the time to request a hair strand test instead because, she's obviously lying. And this is what you see a lot. Now, also, one other thing that happened when I was in hospital was I was misdiagnosed with hepatitis C.
Right.
And,
okay.
And that was a breach of confidentiality as well, by the way. The midwife, she kind of ran in like, it was almost like I'd won something on a game show. She's like, you're hep C positive in front of my stepmother. And I was like, wow, okay, that's nice. 20 months later, I found out I didn't have it. Never had it. I was about to stop breastfeeding and take this very aggressive treatment for it. But because I then had the knowledge of how these tests work and how they could be misinterpreted, I've had a client before who she had hepatitis B. She'd been treated for it. She found out she had it in her first pregnancy. Her husband had a vaccination. Her baby had a vaccination. And when she had a baby, years later, they wanted us to vaccinate this baby. Well, she didn't want to. And it was left to me to do the research and find that, she was only antibody positive.
Right.
And her viral load, it was about 40 times lower than the lowest recorded to be able to pass through breast milk. It was impossible that she could give this baby hepatitis through breast milk, but they would have forced her, or they would have really escalated things, maybe even taken the child. So
you've sort of experienced two different types of prejudice, one because of your drug addiction and the other because of lifestyle choices that you wanted to make and medical choices you wanted to make. Would you say that you experienced that they were treated in the same way? Did you have the same level of prejudice levied at you for both, or do they judge one worse than the other? Or are they treated the same?
I think one's easier to get out of, but not honestly, really, especially with my clients, a lot of them say, I'll sit in on meetings with them because I attend meetings with them and everything. And they'll say, wow, the way she spoke to me then, it was nothing like the way she spoke to me when you weren't there. Okay. And they really, some of the reports you read are so disgustingly inflammatory. You would honestly think that this person was the biggest monster in the world. And it's for nothing. It's more or less, the thing is, once you get in front of these professionals and you can humanize them to each other on both sides, things run a lot more smoothly once they understand this is just another human being making a different choice than I would make. But it's not illegal and it's not reckless, and we can respect that. And this is why it's so important to train the professionals, because they just don't have that balance. But you see this on both sides, because I train doulas as well. So a lot of the doulas, from the same sort of crowd as me, they're great when it comes to bodily autonomy, being trauma informed and informed consent and everything. But the first safeguarding case that I had referred to me through When Push Comes to Shove was a woman who had already had problems with social services and the perinatal mental health team in the past. They were concerned she wasn't engaging enough in this second pregnancy, and her doula decided to tell her the exact same thing she would say to a middle-class doctor's wife. Oh, you can do what you want. These are all your rights. Have you ever heard of free birth? The worst possible thing. So, she needed to try and work with the services a little more, not pull away from them. She was already terrified. It escalated things massively. The doula was now in too deep, so she abandoned her. This wasn't one of our doulas, by the way. So She
That's
came
such
through.
a good point. You make such a good point there, because I think it's really important to understand the way the system works so that you can know how to work within it rather than just sort of doing your own thing. And I wonder if you've come across anybody in the NHS in your and maybe in social services as well, who are kind of more sympathetic and want to be more open-minded and can actually see the benefits of having less intervention with birthing. Do you ever get a sense of that, or is it just really closed down?
There are some great midwives. I mean, actually, my second birth, this midwife, I'm telling you, if she had been calling the shots, my daughter would not be disabled.
Okay.
And she was the one actually to make the call in the end. And she just said, no, this baby is coming out now. And she told them to go and get the consent forms because he wasn't going to make that call. And as I'm in the recovery suite, I'm sat in the bed and I'm looking at the drip next to me. I said, is that synthetic oxytocin? She says, yeah, how do you know so much about birth? So I started talking to her about, how I'd planned to pre-birth and I was training. And I said, when push comes to shove, she said, is that really what they call it? It's a great name. And she's talking to me about all the pre-birth podcasts that she follows. So she
Wow.
thinks, yeah. And she said to me, look, Charlotte, there are many times I go home and I think, should we have intervened there? And she said, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that we needed to with you. But there are a lot that, and it's catching them while they're young. It's the same with the social work as well. They've still got the enthusiasm. There's a lot of bitterness and misogyny within birth. And it's almost like, because they've had such bad births themselves, they sometimes take a joy out of it. These older ones particularly. And you're going for your natural birth. We'll see when you're begging for that epidural. Why, But the younger ones that are coming through, it's still a big mountain we've got in front of us, and there's just so much in the system. I really would say the less intervention that you can engage with is best for most women, but it's having that nuance. It's being able to see when, and the thing is, some women need loads and loads of, like a lot of the women I work with. So with drug addiction, there are higher risks. If you're taking stimulants, your cardiovascular system's impacted. If you are using needles, your vascular. So I didn't get these tattoos just because I like them, because I almost ended up with a double amputation. And the complication I had is directly related to blood pressure. There's more risk of stillbirth. There's more risk of miscarriage. And a lot of these women there's a lot of overlap as well with, coercive control and, domestic violence. And there's a lot of things going on, sex work, sexual trauma. And what these professionals don't understand is, if you actually did present things as optional, which they are, rather than mandatory, just letting that woman know that, she doesn't have to have that vaginal examination. Because a lot of these women, they were like 14 years old when they started working the streets. I've known them as young as 12.
Oh my goodness.
Tell me that they were as young as 12. And the last thing they want to do, when they don't have anywhere to live, they haven't had a bath for 2 weeks, they've got no change of clothes, and they're having sex with several men a day to support the habit. And often the professionals barely manage to disguise their disgust. They don't want to walk into a room, smelly, vulnerable, alone, and be forced to part their legs so another stranger gets to invade their body. And to be honest, not to gain much knowledge from it. So while a lot of these women may actually benefit from more intervention and more monitoring, if you could be more lenient and allow them to exercise some autonomy, at least they'd engage with some of it, rather than pulling away entirely, which is what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the way that you kind of straddle both aspects of allowing people, because that's what empowerment is, isn't it? Empowerment isn't to be coerced either by the medical establishment or the alternative health establishment. It's finding your own path and what you're comfortable with and weighing up your own risks and rewards. And that's where your autonomy comes from, is from education and from knowledge, so that you can start making the best decisions for yourself. And that's what I really love about you. It sounds like you really give people the education, the information that they need, but also the space and the support that they need to know that whatever decision they make is not going to result in judgment or recrimination.
Yeah, or withdrawal of support as well, or we just can't support this,
Yeah.
you're too dangerous. But this is
Yeah.
something that you do see on both sides. This is why I offer the training to the doulas as well, because often what happens is we see this sacred space, a woman's birthing space, become a battleground for other people's ideologies. I mean,
Absolutely.
sometimes you turn up to a birth and you feel the atmosphere straight
Yeah.
away as soon as somebody announces that you're the doula.
Yeah.
Midwives, a lot of midwives have problem with doulas, but it's vice versa as well.
Yeah.
You can take all the information in the world from both sides, but the only way nobody can give you the answers. It's your
Yeah.
intuition that guides you. And I
Absolutely.
do firmly believe in integrative, you know, modalities, because there's more than one way to skin a cat, and not all of them are very
Absolutely.
good. And you know, sometimes you do actually need the help of the doctors.
Yeah.
Sometimes a more benign and natural method might be more helpful.
Yeah.
But people get so wrapped up in their ideologies and they don't realize, and it's the same. Sometimes, somebody will refer a case to you from, and all she wants to do is free birth, and she's just living on this farm and minding her own business. And then you start speaking to the family, and you think, no, there is something not quite right going on here. She is making the same sort of decisions that I would make, but is she making? Because sometimes people do make these decisions because they are. There is something to hide, or they are doing something wrong, and it's very easy and it's very dangerous to fall into the trap of thinking if somebody's ideologies are aligned with yours, that's all the answer that you need.
I mean, from a sort of mindfulness perspective, which is where I come from, which is sort of non-judgment and having to let go of ego and see things as they are, it sounds like you take a really mindful approach to this, because you do have to let your own experiences kind of go and not prejudice you against a decision that somebody else might want to make. And you kind of have to let your own ego of being right go, or your ideology go, just to sit and be present with that person and to really allow them to get to the decision that they want to make. And it's like you say, holding space for them. So it sounds incredible. And I should imagine that anybody that comes across you and has you as an advocate is very, very lucky.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's funny you should say that, because one of the modules on my course is actually radical self-responsibility. And the professionals always get excited when you say, oh, yeah, we're always telling them, you can keep going on about what people did to you in the past, but at the end of the day, you're in control now. I'm like, no, I don't just mean them, darling. Oh, because, and I have a lesson on egoic referrals versus legitimate referrals. Everybody's running these little inner scripts. They're subconscious. They don't even know they're there.
Absolutely.
Are you doing these things for the right reasons? Are you responding to something else that's not even in front of you right now? There are times, when I've had clients and I know they're making decisions for their children that it kind of makes my heart sink. I won't do that to my baby, but it's not my baby. And if they're making decisions that are so out of alignment with me, then I could choose not to support them because I'm not the right person for them. But that's the most important thing, is you can have your experiences inform you and inform your practice, but it's not your life and it's not your baby.
I love that. I think the work you're doing is so, so important. And I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to have this conversation to sort of enlighten people, because I've learned so much today from you for things that I think, unless you come across these experiences yourself, you don't even think about it. I mean, I wouldn't think about how drug addiction affects somebody having a birthing plan. I went through the mainstream birthing situation when I had my kids. I didn't have a great experience. I wish I'd taken a more natural approach to my birthing, and I'd had more knowledge then that I have now. So I didn't experience the sort of prejudice that you're talking about. But I think also as well, COVID has maybe made that even worse. I think that there's been this sort of, less acceptability of a lot of the alternative and complementary medical approaches since that. Unfortunately, I think there's been a bigger division come around. So I think you're so needed at the moment, and the work you do just sounds incredible. I love the fact that you're looking to empower other people and educate other people in doing what you do. So because this is how we change things, this is how we change systems, through conversation, through education, and through having more people advocate in the same way that you do. So if people want to find out more about the work that you're doing, where's the best place that they can go and find you?
So I'm most active on Instagram and Facebook. So it's just the Dependency Doula on both of those. I'm also on Telegram, but I'm not as active. Also, the Dependency Doula. And well, I've recently started Twitter, same, not Twitter, TikTok, same name. And my longer form writing is on my Substack, which is the Dependency Doula Journals, which I go more into detail about the issues that I support. The name of the CIC is the Conduit Collective CIC. That's the name of it on Instagram. And my website is thedependencydoula.com. So anybody can get in touch with me via any of those routes.
Brilliant.
Follow my work.
And what we'll do is we will put links to all of those in the description of the video as well, so that if you want to contact Charlotte and get in contact with her to be an advocate or to help or for some training or a speaking role, anything like that, you can contact her through there. Charlotte, it's been so eye-opening for me to speak to you today. I've learned so much and I'm really appreciative for the time that you've given us today. If you could give one word of advice to somebody who's feeling really scared and alone right now in their birth journey, what would it be?
Honestly, to get the right support, to be honest. I mean, we touched on this earlier, and it's not to scare people, but you can have the most meticulous birth plan in the world. Now, the reason that you're so vulnerable when you're giving birth is not just because you're in pain. It's not just because it's a new experience. You know, it is because when you get to the second stage of labour, your prefrontal cortex basically goes into standby mode. This is so that your body can behave instinctively as an animal would do to give birth. Now, the medical setting completely, behaves in the opposite way to support that. It works against it. But not only that, your brain is in basically a hypnotic state. So you're very, very suggestible. So it's not just that you're vulnerable. It's not just that you're in pain. That epidural sounds really nice. That cesarean section sounds really nice, because you are like a child, and there are fewer barriers between what that person is saying to you and it getting through to you. It's really important to have somebody there. And I would say, and I'm not saying that lots of women have beautiful birthing experiences in hospitals. And even if you're not planning a hospital, there is always a chance of a transfer. But as a doula, when I go there and I take all of that negativity for that woman to be that barrier between her and them, I'm physically ill for weeks. If it's one that I can really strongly advocate for, I mean, I'm on my ass for weeks, because it really is that heavy, and you don't need that. So I would say, and also with the safeguarding, again, find somebody who knows how to communicate with these people, because just trying to navigate it by yourself, if you've not experienced this before, it could really cost you a lot.
I think that
the system is changing. Sorry, the system is changing so much, and this is what I'm trying to get across. Like I said, not everybody that I support when it comes to toxicology is a drug addict. These are perfectly normal women who've gone into hospital, and it's an incorrect test. Yeah. I'm seeing more and more sort of middle class sort of families falling into the web, because the criteria is just expanding all the time, and the threshold is dropping and dropping and dropping, and it's bringing more people into it all the time. And this is why the training is important for the doulas as well, because they think, oh, my clients have money, and it's not how it used to be.
Yeah.
But it's very easy to navigate, and usually you're straight out of it if you know how to speak their language. So it's certainly not to try and frighten people. It's certainly to empower people. It's just knowing how to work it.
So get the support you need. I think that is absolutely brilliant. You obviously support people fantastically, and you are a brilliant advocate. It's been so great to speak to you today. Thank you so much for joining us at the PHA. And you're very welcome. It was great to speak to you. And thank you everyone for listening as well. I hope you've learned something. I hope maybe it's been eye-opening for you. If you do want to find out anything more about Charlotte's work, please do go and check out her website. Also, obviously, check out the PHA website. And if you want to become one of our practitioners, check out our practitioners listings and all those sorts of things, because the PHA can really support you and put you in touch with the right people as well. So I hope you've enjoyed listening to this conversation, and I hope to catch up with you again soon. In the meantime, do take care. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.